Keiki Kuryu is a lonely high schooler who just wants to be in a relationship and spend some time with cute girls. However, his life changes when he finds a love letter and is forced to find the mysterious girl, all while dating 6 beautiful girls with weird obsessions. The scene opens up with Keiki Kuryu dreaming about 3 girls with some big talents, but gets soon interrupted by his sister, Mizuha Kuryu, who sneaks into his bed. Later, at breakfast, Keiki gets all worked up and tells his sister to stop because being around her makes him want a girlfriend even more. In school, he gets a message from his upperclassman, Sayuki Takehara, inviting him to visit her in the calligraphy club. Meanwhile, Sayuki is practicing for an upcoming competition, and because of that her club room is a mess. She stands up and tells Keiki there's much better things than cleaning, but Keiki doesn't listen to her. Suddenly, a cute blonde girl Yuika Koga pops out of mess and reveals that she isn't too happy since she and Sayuki don't get along well. Then there's Mao Nanju, the red-haired classmate of Keiki. However, Mao's got no patience for their chit-chat, she's all about action. After a bit of cleaning hustle and a really good opening, they wrap things up, and Keiki gives them the green light to take a breather. Keiki hangs back though, tidying up the last bits in the room. Just when he's about to make his exit, he stumbles upon a love letter with his name on it. Keiki's joy reaches the sky as he opens the letter. However, he is hit with a curveball when he finds a plot tucked under the letter. After finding the love letter, Keiki decides to seek advice from his best friend, Shuma Akiyama. They're playing cards while Keiki spills the beans about the whole situation. But guess what? Shuma seems clueless and not really interested. However, he does come up with a funny nickname for Keiki's secret lover, Cinderella. It's like a little joke because just like Cinderella left her shoe behind, Keiki's lover left her plot behind. Anyway, Shuma does have some useful information for Keiki. He mentions that the fact the letter was found in the clubroom narrows down the list of suspects. This means that Keiki now has a mission. He's determined to find out who wrote that heartfelt confession. As Keiki continues on his quest, he unexpectedly crosses paths with Sayuki. She starts showing a lot of interest in spending time in that very same clubroom and even invites Keiki to a sleepover. However, Keiki decides to decline Sayuki's invitation, even though he suspects she might be involved in the whole love letter situation. His next move is to catch up with Yuika, who happens to be hanging out in the library. Yuika gets curious about Sayuki and her big talents, thinking they might give her an advantage with guys. Keiki kind of agrees with her, and as Sayuki leaves, she drops a little nugget of wisdom. When a girl playfully teases a guy, it might mean she's interested in him. This leaves Keiki scratching his head, trying to figure out what it all means. Later, while playing basketball, Shuma, who's already quite popular with the girls in school, asks Keiki how things are going, but Keiki doesn't notice any changes in the girl's behavior. He feels a bit jealous of Shuma's popularity, but deep down, he knows he has the potential to make someone fall head over heels for him. While playing, Keiki spots Mao watching him from the other end of the court but ends up getting smacked by a ball, leading to a little blackout. Later, he opens his eyes in the infirmary and is shocked to see Mao sitting beside him. Suddenly, without a second thought, Keiki pops the question about whether Mao would support him getting into a relationship with another girl. Mao seems a bit uneasy about it and makes a quick exit, telling him not to rely on her for that. On his way home, Keiki crosses paths with Sayuki, who is taking care of a giraffe-like dog named Vegetarian, which is basically the same thing as naming a pit bull as Princess. However, the dog then runs off to another woman. Sayuki becomes somewhat jealous of the dog and wishes that someone would give her that kind of attention, so she gets closer to Keiki and asks him to pet her. Keiki takes a shot while everyone passing by, but that doesn't matter when he gets a kiss on the cheek as a reward. This whole scenario, along with Mao's intel that Sayuki is the last one to leave the clubroom, leads Keiki to a conclusion: Sayuki is probably the one who left that love letter. He tries to bring it up with her, but in his mind, the words come out as awkward as asking her out. Sayuki, who is eavesdropping on this, surprises Keiki by agreeing to his proposal for a date. Keiki's a bit skeptical, but Sayuki assures him it's not just about that. She's actually super grateful to Keiki for preventing the club from shutting down last year. Keiki respects her a bunch for that, but he goes ahead and asks her if there's something more between them. Sayuki turns a shade on him and makes a quick getaway, leaving the food and Keiki behind. The next day, Sayuki is avoiding him, which puts Keiki in a total funk. He turns to Mao for advice, and she dishes out the tough truth: he's got to step up his game a bit. Keiki confronts Sayuki, who says that she really does have feelings for him and things will work out. With that, Keiki goes into stealth mode, trailing Sayuki after school and catching her to spill the beans that he's onto her secret, and he's dead serious about her. Sayuki blushes while hinting she needs to talk the next day. That day feels like forever, but when it finally arrives, Keiki walks towards the club where she is still practicing. Sayuki asks Keiki to close his eyes as she wants to show him something. After a bit, when Keiki opens his eyes, he is shocked to see his senior in a really creepy manner with a dog collar around her neck asking to be treated like a pet. Sayuki offers her strap to Keiki, but the poor boy is still in shock, trying to process what's happening to him as he steps backward. Meanwhile, Sayuki is stepping towards him, revealing that she is a creep with weird obsessions. Sayuki adds that she wants him to be her master who can scold her all night long. However, Keiki rejects her offer as he knows he is in trouble. After that, Keiki bumps into his teacher in the stairway. The teacher praises him for cleaning the clubroom but mentions that he left the door unlocked. Keiki is confused because he remembers locking the door himself. Suddenly, he has a realization. He thinks that the girl who sent the love letter must have been inside the clubroom already when she left the letter on the table. She probably heard Keiki approaching and hid. Keiki believes that after he unlocked the room from the outside, the girl opened the door from the inside and left it unlocked. After Keiki talks to Shuma, he heads back to the classroom and expresses his gratitude to Mao for advising him to talk to Sayuki directly. Just then, something interesting happens in the library. Keiki helps Yuka, but suddenly Sayuki shows up and starts teasing him. Keiki tells her not to disturb him while he's working. However, Sayuki responds by saying that it's the perfect time for him to punish her as her master. Yuka, seeing Sayuki teasing Keiki, tells her to stop. Sayuki argues that she can tease him since they're close and even reveals their upcoming date. After that incident, Sayuki teases Keiki again while picking a book and brings up their previous encounter in a weird way. Yuka overhears this and starts questioning the meaning behind Sayuki's words. She then asks Keiki if he went on a date with Sayuki, and he admits that he did. Yuka continues to question him, asking if he approached Sayuki, and Keiki reluctantly admits to it, feeling ashamed. Yuka gets upset and calls him creep, but then she asks if he and Sayuki are together, and Keiki denies it. In an unexpected twist, Keiki asks Yuka what he can do to make her happy, and suddenly she becomes happy herself and asks him for a date on the upcoming Sunday. Afterwards, when Keiki is at home, his sister Mizuha notices that he's acting differently. She discovers that he's going on a date with Yuka this Sunday. Mizuha, being the caring sister she is, decides to give her inexperienced brother some advice on how to make the date go well. The big day finally arrives. Keiki follows Mizuha's advice to the letter. He arrives at the meeting point early, just as Mizuha instructed. When Yuka appears, he compliments her dress and hair, just like he was told. With that, they head to the movie theater, and Keiki acts like a true gentleman, holding her hand and treating her like a princess. After that, they go to a fast food restaurant, as Mizuha suggested. Throughout the day, Keiki keeps thanking Mizuha in his mind for her helpful instructions. Everything seems to be going smoothly, except for one little hiccup. Mao, who secretly watches them from outside the restaurant's window, gets mad at Keiki. Later, Keiki takes Yuka shopping. They have a fun time running around the shops until Yuka excuses herself for a bathroom break. Keiki waits for her, but when she doesn't show up, he starts to worry. He goes searching for her and finds her being bothered by some boys. Keiki quickly rushes over and takes her away from them. He gets angry at the boys, telling them that Yuka is with him, and apologizes to Yuka for not looking for her effectively. This act makes Yuka blush and feel happy, so she kisses Keiki's forehead and thanks him for saving her. As they head back from their date, Keiki remembers how Yuka was often left out because she's half Japanese. However, he always found her hair and eyes beautiful, unlike others who ignored her. He also recalls how he used to talk to her every day, trying to make her feel comfortable. Eventually, she started to relax, smile, and have normal conversations with him. The next day, Keiki is having lunch with Shuma when he receives a text from Yuka. She says she has something important to discuss, so he meets her in the storage room in the library. After homeroom, Keiki heads to the storage room to meet Yuka, just as she asked. When they see each other, she greets him and they exchange some nice words to start off. Meanwhile, Keiki thinks Yuka is going to ask him to be her boyfriend, but instead, she reveals that she wants him to be her pet. This totally shocks Keiki, and he's not sure how to respond. Yuka insists, and even promises to reward him in a secret way. The next morning, Keiki has a bad dream. He sees a princess who is very shy kidnapping a prince from another kingdom and making him her personnel. This dream scares him so much that he wakes up screaming. Later, during breakfast, Keiki tells his sister that he doesn't want to go to school because he's not feeling well. However, the truth is, he's still trying to process what happened with Yuka. However, Mizuha insists that he goes to school anyway. When Keiki arrives at school, he stands in front of his locker and thinks about who could have left the love letter in the club room. Suddenly, he gets a big shock when he finds a woman's plot in his locker. It surprises him so much that he screams. Later, he talks to Yuka and asks her if she's the one who put it in his locker. She admits that she did, and Keiki gets really angry with her. He doesn't want to keep it, so he gives it back to her. As their conversation continues, Yuka decides to share her picture book story with Keiki. Surprisingly, the story turns out to be the same as the one he saw in his dream. Keiki tries to ignore it, but Yuika insists that the story represents their relationship. She confidently tells him that she will make her desired relationship with him a reality. This makes Keiki nervous, causing him to sweat on his face. Feeling overwhelmed, he quickly runs away. When he returns to his locker, he finds something alarming. There's a picture of him and Sayuki together, along with a note from Sayuki. The note threatens to post the picture on the internet if he doesn't come to the club room immediately. With that, Keiki rushes straight to the club room. To his surprise, he finds Sayuki dressed as a maid, asking to be disciplined. This leaves Keiki speechless, as he never expected such a sight. Sayuki explains that she learned to dress like that from a book, teasing Keiki in the process. She complains that he hasn't been giving her enough attention lately, expressing her unique fantasies to him. Overwhelmed, Keiki decides to escape from the situation during lunch break. During lunch, he sits with his friend Shuma and notices Mao looking at him. Shuma suggests that Mao might be the one behind the love letter, as she often stares at Keiki. It's important to approach such situations with caution and not jump to conclusions. Keiki may need to gather more information before making any assumptions. However, Keiki believes that Mao's stares are directed towards Shuma due to his charming personality. Shuma assures Keiki that Mao never looks at him when he's alone, but she does blush when she looks at Keiki. Deep in thought, Keiki reflects on the recent events while lying on a bench. Suddenly, he receives a text from Sayuki, asking him to visit the club room after school. Worried that Sayuki might trouble him again, Keiki reluctantly heads to the club room. To his surprise, Yuika intercepts him and tricks him into closing his eyes. She leads him to a room where she proceeds to tie him up. Yuika demands that Keiki pledge his loyalty to her and threatens to steal his first kiss if he refuses. As Yuika gets closer to Keiki, he starts questioning the significance of love in a first kiss. Just as things become intense, Sayuki comes to his rescue, interrupting the situation. The girls begin arguing, revealing that they both know each other's secrets. In the midst of the argument, Mao unexpectedly enters the room and takes Keiki away from the chaos. Mao blames Keiki for being too kind to both girls and mentions seeing him on a date with Yuika recently. When Keiki asks Mao why his dating bothers her, she becomes flustered and admits that she doesn't want him hanging out with other girls. This adds even more confusion to the already complicated situation for Keiki. Late at night, Mao can be seen sketching some sus things on her notebook when she dozes off, calling Keiki an idiot. The next morning, things got tense between Keiki and Mao. On the other hand, Yuika also appears saying morning to both of them. She then notices that Mao seems upset and also apologizes for what she did the day before. Keiki is surprised that Yuika can be kind despite her sometimes mean behavior. Afterwards in the clubroom, Sayuki apologizes to Keiki for making him and Mao upset and promises not to embarrass the loser in the public anymore. With that, Sayuki wants Keiki to resolve his situation with Mao because as a loyal dog she doesn't want to ruin their friendship. Later in the class, Keiki tries to talk to Mao, but she refuses and feels like he had abandoned her. To make things right and ask for her forgiveness, Keiki suggests that they go out together with Shuma just like they used to. The following day, the group goes to an arcade, where the trio enjoys their time playing games. Suddenly, Keiki trips and is about to fall, but thankfully Shuma catches him and the both end up in a really awkward position. Watching, Mao quickly pulls out her phone and starts clicking their pictures, to which Shuma playfully teases Mao, and she hints her jealousy towards him. Later at night, Shuma leaves them alone, allowing them to spend more time. Mao tells Keiki that she can go alone as her house is nearby, but Keiki refuses, saying that he can't let that happen since she is a girl. Listening to this, Mao blushes, and as they walk towards Mao's house she stops and tells Keiki that going out as a trio is not satisfying for her and wishes to go as a couple, but before the dense loser can process what he heard, it starts raining. They have to seek shelter wherever they can. Due to rain, Keiki's gaze shifts to Mao's talents, making her nervous. Mao then asks about Yuika and Sayuki, but he tells her there is nothing between them and they just feel more comfortable with him. She then asks Keiki if he wants to be in a relationship, to which he replies that he fantasizes about being in one, which makes things a bit awkward between them. With that, Keiki decides to change the atmosphere by getting drinks since Mao is feeling cold. However, when he returns, he sees her looking at some photos of Shuma. He gets the impression that Mao is in love with Shuma, which saddens her. She runs away, leaving the boy once again unsure if he misunderstood everything. The next day, Sayuki realizes that things still haven't been resolved, so she decides to stay out of it until Keiki can sort things out. Yuika also notices that Keiki looks really down, but it's his younger sister who can't help but offer him some comfort after hearing the whole story. She suggests that he just be himself and give it his all, because that's the best way to handle the situation. Even though the answers they've gotten so far are unclear, Keiki is determined to talk to Mao and figure things out. He pursues her until she finally confesses that she can't stop thinking about him. Keiki apologizes for everything and suggests that they spend more time getting to know each other. He really wants to start over and make things right. Keiki is willing to do whatever it takes to restore things to normal. Mao takes a moment and then makes a surprising request. She asks Keiki to officially start dating Shuma. Keiki is shocked by this request, but it turns out that Mao wants inspiration for her unique manga, and she draws from the interactions between Shuma and Keiki. However, Keiki strongly declines and asks Mao to stop using them as examples, especially since their identities are not well hidden. Mao explains that it's impossible because the series is extremely popular and there are already high expectations for its second installment. She warns Keiki that if he refuses, she will make sure he never has a chance with any other girl. Despite Keiki's reluctance, Mao remains firm in her decision. Keiki becomes disheartened, realizing that even Mao has a dark side. However, days later, he receives an unpleasant surprise when he finds another anonymous envelope in his locker. This time, it contains a photo of him with Sayuki. Inside the envelope, there's also a message telling Keiki to go to the astronomy club or else his reputation will be destroyed. This frightens Keiki, so he quickly heads to the club. When he arrives, he is greeted by a girl wearing a cloak and with vibrant blue hair. She introduces herself as Koharu Utori. The next day, while Keiki is in the clubroom, he starts to wonder why so many strange things have been happening to him lately. His days haven't exactly been normal since he rejected Mao's offer. Suddenly, he sees Yuika in the clubroom, dressed as a bunny girl and jumping around. Keiki is confused about how this came to be. Sayuki explains that in order for Yuika to be accepted into the club, she had to dress as a bunny girl for a whole day. Mao also joins the club, taking advantage of Sayuki's love for her strange manga by promising her a copy of the new edition. Just when things seem to be settling down, Keiki receives a text from Mao. She immediately threatens him not to reveal the real reason she joined the club, as she would then show her work to Mizuha. This turns the club into a chaotic place, filled with unexpected situations. Keiki can't believe how things have taken such a strange turn. In the astrology room, Keiki asks Koharu why she called him. To his delight, Koharu confesses that she's in love with him. Keiki is overjoyed and thinks she might be the Cinderella he's been searching for. He accepts her feelings and eagerly rushes towards her, ready to propose. To his surprise, Koharu reveals that she's actually crazy about his friend Shuma. She asks Keiki to help her win Shuma's heart, or else she'll make a picture of him with Sayuki go viral, which could ruin his life. Keiki is caught off guard by this unexpected twist. With that, they decide to meet up at a restaurant to come up with a plan. Keiki doesn't think there will be any issues since Shuma has a preference for cute girls and Koharu fits that description. Just then Koharu reveals that she knows it's impossible because she's actually older than both Shuma and Keiki, despite her appearance. Keiki finds this hard to believe, but when he sees the color of Koharu's skirt, which is the same as Sayuki's, it confirms her claim. He starts to consider giving up, but the photo won't let him. He then makes a commitment to find a way to bring Shuma and Koharu together. Even though it seems like a challenging task, but Keiki is determined to make it work. Later in the evening, Mizuha finds Keiki lost in thought as she returns from her shopping trip. Keiki, grateful for her hard work, decides to show his appreciation by buying her an ice cream and helping her with the shopping bags. Mizuha then shares some exciting news with him. They will be switching to summer uniforms, and everyone will be wearing the same colored skirt. The only thing that will set them apart is the ribbon. Keiki is relieved to hear this because he already has a plan in mind to differentiate himself. Listening to this, Keiki knows that he got it all covered. The next day, Keiki introduces Shuma and Koharu to each other. Shuma is amazed and thinks that Koharu is a younger student because of her appearance. However, he gets even more flustered when she even calls him senior in Japanese. Keiki is happy to see that his plan worked. He also notices that Koharu always wears a hoodie because her skin is sensitive, which makes it impossible to see the ribbon she wears. Koharu takes advantage of the situation and exchanges numbers with Shuma. They even take a photo together, making Koharu feel like her dreams have finally come true. Later on, Keiki starts wondering why the girl from the letter hasn't reached out to him yet. Feeling a bit lost, he turns to Koharu for help in figuring out who she might be. After analyzing the situation, Keiki realizes that the girl doesn't necessarily have to be someone from their club. She could be any girl from their school or even someone from outside who happened to enter the club room that day. This means that he has a long way to go in his investigation. Keiki decides to gather information at the club room, but then changes his mind. He knows that his creep clubmates will most likely be up to their usual activities. Instead, he comes up with a brilliant idea to ask the teacher for help. However, just as he starts climbing the steps, he unexpectedly bumps into Fujimoto, the vice president of the student council, who is carrying a bunch of papers. I gotta say she is definitely the third sister of Rem and Rem. In the process, Fujimoto slips and falls, and Keiki quickly jumps in to prevent her from getting hurt. Just then something strange happens. Fujimoto ends up on top of him and doesn't want to let go for a while. Keiki tries to tell her that she can get up, but she seems to feel a bit odd about the situation. Afterward, Keiki decides to approach the teacher and inquire if she noticed anyone wandering around the floor that day. To his surprise, the teacher mentions running into Fujimoto. This revelation makes Fujimoto a strong contender as the potential girl who left the letter in her plot. As Keiki ponders over the situation, Fujimoto suddenly appears behind him. She explains that she's been looking for him to express her gratitude for saving her the previous day. To show her appreciation, she presents him with a box of chocolates. Just as she's about to leave, she clings onto him and takes a sniff, saying that she needed a recharge. It seems like Fujimoto is quite fond of Keiki and isn't afraid to show it. After a few days, Keiki and Koharu find themselves in the astrology room, looking through pictures of Fujimoto. Keiki had asked Koharu to observe Fujimoto, and they both agree that she's a great student but can be a bit clumsy at times, which people find cute. It seems like Fujimoto has been giving Keiki a lot of attention because of their club activities. In an attempt to clear his mind, Keiki heads to his club room to think. However, he unexpectedly encounters Yuika there, who sets a trap for him. After a Riz moment, she quickly runs away, calling him a rom-com protagonist. As Yuika leaves, there's a knock on the door, and it turns out to be Fujimoto. She has come to inspect the club room and make sure nothing strange is happening. More than anything, she wanted to ask Keiki if he could volunteer to help pick up the trash. Just then, Sayuki, who had been observing from a distance, sees Fujimoto as an imposter and decides to join them when they go to clean up the trash. At the cleaning site, Fujimoto tries to get closer to Keiki, which makes Sayuki feel uncomfortable. Sayuki asks Fujimoto to back off, but since Keiki is single and not in a romantic relationship with Sayuki, Fujimoto takes the opportunity to provoke her even more by getting even closer. Sayuki can't handle it anymore and decides to mark her territory under a bridge by licking and ignoring his pleas to stop. In that moment, Keiki remembers a similar situation from his childhood with his grandfather's dog. His grandfather taught him a secret technique to keep the dog away by grabbing its tail. Without wasting any time, Keiki decides to apply the same technique to Sayuki. She blushes deeply but seems to enjoy it so much that she doesn't complain and eventually leaves on her own, feeling like she can't control herself any longer. After that, Keiki returns to Fujimoto, who notices that he found a magazine. She tries to leave him alone to entertain himself, but ends up falling into a lake. Keiki rushes to help her, and in the process, he catches a glimpse of her plot. To be polite, he offers her his jacket, trying not to look too much. The next day, Keiki decides to share all the information he has gathered about Fujimoto with Shuma. They happen to run into her, but she keeps avoiding Keiki, which makes him believe that she is still embarrassed about the previous incident. Surprisingly, Fujimoto calls Keiki to the student council room to thank him for lending her the jacket. She even prepares tea and cake for him. However, things take a strange turn when she clings to him and ignores his attempts to be cautious in case someone walks in. Fujimoto assures him that they won't be interrupted for a while, and they end up falling asleep while hugging. When Keiki wakes up, he gets a big surprise. Turns out, Fujimoto has a creep kink for people's scents. At that moment, Keiki's scent happens to be her favorite, and she wants his fresh shorts. Keiki laments the fact that Fujimoto seemed like the only normal girl interested in him, but it turns out that's not the case. After connecting all the dots and realizing that Fujimoto might be the girl from the letter, Keiki firmly refuses to give his shorts. As the days go by, Shuma and Koharu's relationship is going smoothly. However, they face a challenge. Shuma doesn't know Koharu's true age, and if he finds out, he might reject her. To overcome this, they decide to get closer by organizing a double date. But here's the catch, Shuma is unsure who to go with. Yuika is too cute, Fujimoto has her unique quirks, and Mao would probably be against Shuma having a girlfriend. That leaves Sayuki as the only option. Sayuki is happy to be chosen, even though she knows it was the lesser evil choice. At the bowling club, Sayuki isn't really good at sports, and to make things trickier, she's never played bowling before. But guess what? Sayuki isn't afraid of a challenge. She suggests a bet to spice things up. The loser of the game has to let the winner paint their face, and the third person has to follow a command from the winner. At first, Keiki hesitates because he knows Sayuki might be putting herself at a disadvantage, but Sayuki has faith in herself. She doesn't think Koharu is all that great at bowling because she's small. Well, surprise, Koharu turns out to be a bowling pro. She's been bowling with her family and even manages to come in first place. Shuma, on the other hand, ends up in third place. After the game, Koharu asks Shuma if they can call each other by their names. Shuma is overjoyed because it's like a dream come true for him. He's thrilled to be treated with confidence by a small Japanese girl like Koharu. Things are really going well between Koharu and Shuma. After their awesome date, Koharu is extremely happy. She tells Keiki that she and Shuma talks all day and even make plans for future dates. Koharu feels like it's time to be honest and confess her true feelings to Shuma. One day, after class, Koharu waits for Shuma and asks him to leave together. However, things do not go as planned in this accursed world. Keiki, being the loser he is, decides to play the role of the stalker that Koharu used to be and follows them. Koharu starts talking about the first time she saw Shuma, and it was love at first sight for her. She even reveals her true age to him while confessing her feelings. To Koharu's surprise, Shuma is taken aback by her confession and sadly rejects her. It turns out that Shuma is a fan of girls younger than him, and that makes his heart heavy. Koharu is left with a broken heart and has no choice but to accept Shuma's decision. Just then Keiki steps in and has a chat with Shuma. He feels that rejecting someone for such a trivial reason isn't fair. Shuma realizes that Keiki has a point. He remembers all the effort Koharu put in for a whole year just to be able to talk to him. Shuma realizes that this time it feels different, and he decides to do something about it. Keiki meets up with Koharu, and they discuss Shuma's questionable reasons for rejecting her. However, Keiki stops the conversation because he feels guilty and asks Koharu for time to be friends and let go of his preference for younger-looking girls. Koharu finds this response cliché and sees it as Shuma's inability to reject her properly. Shuma, on the other hand, feels even worse after this conversation. But here's the twist. It turns out that Koharu was just testing him. Deep down, she's okay with waiting for him. It seems like everything is going well between them. With that, Shuma turns on the lights in the room and is shocked to see that the astronomy club is filled with secretly taken photos. This discovery makes him reconsider whether he wants to pursue a relationship with Koharu, as she appears to be a stalker. Later, Keiki decides to check under his mattress and finds Cinderella's plot that he's been hiding. He's trying to figure out who the mystery girl from the love letter could be, but he's ruled out Fujimoto. He starts wondering if it could be one of the girls from the club who are a bit creep but cute in their own ways. After putting it back, he heads downstairs, lost in his thoughts, accidentally. He walks into the bathroom and sees his sister. It creates an uncomfortable atmosphere, but unlike other anime girls, Mizuha understands that it was unintentional and lets him walk away without any trouble. It's definitely an awkward situation for Keiki, but at least his sister knows it was an accident. Later on, Keiki and Mizuha are just hanging out on the couch, having a casual conversation. Mizuha asks Keiki what he thinks about green plot, and he playfully says it would look good on her. Mizuha notices that Keiki seems a bit distracted and asks him why. At first, Keiki hesitates, but then he finally asks Mizuha what she would do if he wanted to make a girl his pet. Mizuha's response is pretty straightforward. She says she would call the police. Keiki takes it a step further and asks Mizuha what she would do if he became a girl's pet. Again, she responds by calling the police and just to test the waters. Keiki asks Mizuha what she would do if there was a girl who liked to smell his plot. And guess what? Mizuha's answer is the same, calling the police. This exchange actually reassures Keiki because he was starting to doubt if he was the weird one. All of a sudden, the doorbell rings, and to everyone's surprise, it's Sayuki. She was feeling bored and wanted to see Keiki. Sayuki apologizes for her behavior during the trash collection incident, blaming it on not getting enough attention. She came to Keiki to receive some love. Keiki agrees to give her some attention, but he wants to make sure it doesn't go to the extremes of last time. He wonders what he should do. And then he gets an idea. He treats Sayuki like a dog and pets her belly, which makes Sayuki extremely happy. She wants to reward Keiki by snuggling with him, and Keiki is in paradise. Unfortunately, Mizuha enters with tea and interrupts them. Seeing that she's interrupting, she leaves so they can continue in peace. However, Keiki realizes that this situation could be misunderstood, so he quickly calls for an emergency family conference to explain that it's not what Mizuha thinks. However, the more Keiki tries to justify himself, the worse it gets. Sayuki has had enough and decides to leave. Keiki asks her to find someone else to be her master, but she refuses, saying that only he is worthy. It's definitely a messy situation, and Keiki's attempts to explain himself only seem to make it worse. Things get even more complicated when Yuika shows up, feeling bored and determined to tame Keiki. She brings a bunny costume and tries to persuade Keiki to wear it. Keiki tries to refuse, but Yuika threatens to show an embarrassing manga that Mao made to Mizuha. Keiki feels trapped and has no choice but to comply. Yuika takes photos to capture the awkward scene and decides to reward Keiki by giving him her plot. However, Keiki tries to stop her because he's not interested. In the chaos, Yuika accidentally falls on top of him, and just when you think it couldn't get any worse, Mizuha unexpectedly appears and witnesses the whole situation, once again surprised. With that, Keiki gathers everyone once again for an emergency meeting to explain what really happened with Yuika. He tries to justify that it was actually Yuika who wanted to play, but Mizuha doesn't believe him because it doesn't match her expectations. Unfortunately, Yuika ends up leaving too. After a few hours, Mao calls Keiki to check how things went with Sayuki. It turns out they had a plan all along. Meanwhile, Mizuho is secretly listening to their conversation and discovers that there was nothing to worry about. Mao takes the opportunity to ask Keiki if he has ever had a girlfriend. Keiki admits that he hasn't, and then Mao playfully asks if she could be his first. However, she quickly clarifies that it was just a joke, causing Keiki to ask her not to play with his feelings. Surprisingly, Mizuho, who has been eavesdropping, confirms that Keiki is actually the victim in all these fortunate or unfortunate events. She's amazed that he has the choice between being a master or a pet, but she reaffirms her position as the favorite because she's his younger sister. Keiki goes back to his room and realizes that the plot left by the girl from the letter is gone. He meets up with his friend Koharu and his buddy Shuma to try and figure out what could have happened. They narrow it down to Yuka or Sayuki as the only possibilities. It wasn't planned for the plot to be left there, so Shuma and Koharu suggest that Keiki should check their skirts to find out who it belongs to. However, Keiki thinks it wouldn't be right, so he decides to investigate on his own. He heads to the calligraphy clubroom to meet Sayuki and tells her that he needs to talk to her. They agree to go to an amusement park together to have a conversation outside of school, thinking maybe this will help Keiki get some answers and clear up the confusion surrounding the mysterious plot situation. As Keiki and Sayuki head into the amusement park, Keiki notices that Sayuki is blushing. Sayuki explains that she's worried about her skirt getting blown away because she's wearing one. Keiki is surprised because he knows Sayuki can be a bit bold sometimes. At that moment, Keiki gets an idea. He wonders if Sayuki might be wearing clothes similar to what Cinderella wore. Keiki thinks that by going on rides with lots of movement, he might catch a glimpse. Later, Keiki visits Sayuki's art exhibition and asks her why she chose him as her master. Sayuki tells him that at first, it was simply because he joined the calligraphy club, but gradually she became more convinced that he should be her master. As they are returning home, Keiki takes desperate measures and asks her directly in the middle of the street. Sayuki is extremely embarrassed, but her personality prevents her from refusing, so she lifts it up. Keiki is surprised because he sees something he didn't expect. Back at home, Keiki asks Mizuho if it's normal to go out without wearing anything underneath, but she finds it impossible, which reassures him. As it turns out, that was the case with Sayuki. Because of this incident, Sayuki starts acting nervous and apologizes for going out like that. She realizes how uncomfortable it must have been for Keiki and promises to consider it more in the future. However, despite saying all of this, Sayuki remains uncomfortable and can't stop looking at Keiki. Yuka notices this and tries to make her jealous by getting closer and closer to Keiki, to the point where she even sits on top of him, so Sayuki can't bear it anymore and leaves the club room. Later at the astrology club room, Keiki had a conversation with Shuma and Koharu. They realized that Sayuki is really important. Keiki wanted to talk to her, but he was surprised to find out that Sayuki misunderstood the situation. She thought he was still playing and just pretending to be difficult. Keiki regrets worrying about it. Just then, he gathered the courage to ask Sayuki if she took the plot from his room, and she confessed to it. Keiki thought he had finally found the girl he was looking for, but Sayuki lifted her plot. He realized that she was actually wearing his own boxers. It turns out that Sayuki felt lonely and wanted something of Keiki's, so she took them. Later, as Keiki was leaving school, he met Yuka, who was waiting for the rain to stop. She invited him to her house to warm up because it was very cold outside. Yuka left to make tea for him, but Keiki saw this as an opportunity to find out if she had the missing items from his room. He checked, but unfortunately, Yuka came back earlier than expected. She caught him going through her belongings and took a photo of him. Now, she's threatening to make it go viral unless he becomes her pet. Poor Keiki feels trapped and has no choice but to accept her offer. The next day at school, Keiki is doing everything Yuka tells him to do, and Sayuki gets upset. Sayuki confronts them and says that she knows Keiki wouldn't obey like that unless he's being threatened. She mentions that Keiki prefers big talents like hers, which makes Yuka upset. Yuka tries to get Keiki to admit that he likes small ones, but he can't lie about it and confirms that he prefers big ones. Despite obeying Yuka without complaining, Sayuki decides to leave as she can't bear to see how Keiki is being treated like a doll. After some reflection, Keiki realizes that if he finds out Yuka sent the love letter, he could change the situation. With that, he continues to obey her, and the next day, he dresses up as a butler to go shopping with Yuka. It's a bit embarrassing for him to walk around dressed like that, but they eventually arrive at Yuka's house. She leaves him at the entrance as she wants to take a bath after their long day. Suddenly, Keiki gets an idea and tries to sneak a peek at Yuka's plot again, but unfortunately Yuka catches him and warns him that if he does it again, it'll be really bad. Just then, there's a scream because there's a spider in the bathroom. Keiki rushes to help Yuka, but when he sees her, Yuka forcefully kicks him out and punishes him. However, she secretly likes that he came to her rescue. Just in time, Keiki sees the picture of an old woman with young Yuka, so she takes the opportunity to tell him that the lady in the picture is her grandmother, who she loved when she was a child and was always with her. However, when her grandmother passed away, she felt disappointed as she thinks, why did her grandmother die even though she loved her so much, and chose to isolate herself from her family and the world. Being alone became more of a choice than a result of her classmates' disgust. Just then, Keiki came into her life as a hero and kept talking to her despite her rejection. She thought he was looking for mistreatment, but in reality, it was her who was waiting for him. After all, if she had wanted to distance herself, she could have simply stopped going to the library. That's why he is very special to her. Yuka goes to get something to drink but is still shaken, causing her to trip. Keiki looks straight into her eyes with a serious expression. This makes Yuka blush, but Keiki notices that she has his boxers, so he interrogates her. After forcing her to talk, Yuka confesses that she took them from his room because, as a girl, she is also interested in Boy's plot. Now that they are within reach, Keiki finally breaks free. The next day, Keiki tells Shuma that he feels jealous because Shuma now has a potential girlfriend during the vacation. While Keiki does not have anyone special, Shuma tries to console him by saying that even though Koharu is pretty, she has some strange qualities. When Shuma went to her house, he discovered a bunch of videos of himself and a diary that detailed everything he did during the day. Afterwards, Keiki meets Mao, who asks him to be her boyfriend, but only so she can use him as a model to draw better. Mao explains that drawing normal people like Keiki is challenging, unlike Shuma, who is attractive and easier to draw. Keiki feels a bit troubled by Mao's remark. She then asks him if being handsome is really that important. Keiki agrees but knows that Mao wouldn't understand as she is beautiful herself. Mao blushes and offers to draw him better in her manga as a token of gratitude. Keiki is unsure if it's a reward or a punishment, but it turns out that an editor contacted Mao and offered her the opportunity to write a unique manga. She was looking for ideas about teenage relationships to broaden her horizons and gain experience. With that, Mao promises never to give up on creating strange stories. Since Keiki does not have a girlfriend to provide any scenes, she decides to become his girlfriend. She mounts on him and asks him to make natural expressions so she can draw them. After embarrassing him a bit, she leaves with her quality material. Meanwhile, Keiki encounters Fujimoto, who wants to use him again as a source of scent. But this time she gives him a 5-person pool ticket as a prize for being good to her. He wonders why she is not coming with them, to which she reveals that she won't be able to hold herself back with so many guys' scents at the pool. However, he plans to invite Shuma and Koharu but finds them lying on the ground. He jokingly says he is calling the police. After clarifying that everything was an accident, they refuse to go, but Keiki sees one of the pictures on the ground and realizes it was taken at the time they left the love letter. The following day, Keiki has finally grown some balls and gathers all the girls outside of school to inform them that he will be taking them to a pool. The girls wonder why and how they are going to get the swimsuit, but Keiki has it all covered. Later, at the bus, the girls are all over him and he being a bit arrogant, saying that they need to be thankful to him. Meanwhile, the passenger around gets jealous of him. After arriving at the destination, Keiki is deep in thought when suddenly the girls arrive, showing their outfits to the lucky Maid. Later at the pool, both Yuka and Sayuki have a competition. Being a pro, Yuka swiftly defeats Sayuki and takes Keiki to a slide with her. While sliding, Yuka informs Keiki. Afterwards, Keiki is with Sayuki in a pool when suddenly a massive wave arrives and takes away Sayuki's swimsuit. With that, Keiki moves on to Mao and they walk around the pool. Keiki promises to help her with manga and suddenly Mao trips, but the hero saves the girl, so he holds her hand to avoid any further danger, giving the girl butterflies. After all this, Keiki looks for Mizuha and finds her in a separate pool chilling. Mizuha reveals that she has distanced herself so he can enjoy it with other girls. Listening to this, Keiki asks her to play together to make up for his abandonment, but as she approaches she gets a leg cramp, so Keiki has to carry her. As light, she gets happy. While giving her a piggyback ride, Keiki gets flashback of their childhood memories. Suddenly, a small rainbow appears, and she is totally okay with her, but Keiki is taken aback. Mizuha explains that he saw Mao's manga, but Mizuha's feelings are genuine. They continue walking and come across Koharu, who seems to be screaming something. Upon seeing Keiki, she rushes towards them. Afterwards, Keiki introduces everyone to Koharu. Koharu suddenly asks for help from Keiki and the girls because she is doing a part-time job recruiting people for a declaration contest. Keiki shows his interest, but Koharu tells him that it's an only girl competition where they have to make the cutest confession for their love. Listening to this, she suggests all the girls from Keiki's harem will be taking part, and the winner can make a wish to Keiki. After the competition starts, Koharu takes the stage and introduces herself. She then calls for Sayuki. Despite that, her confession becomes famous among the audience. earning her a whopping 92 points. Next up is Yuika, who shows her frustration with Keiki being surrounded by girls with talents. She also reminds Keiki that he is her pet. Surprisingly, the audience, including some sick people, actually liked her performance, giving her an impressive 95 points. Later, it's Mao's turn, and at first, she acts. Last but not least, Koharu calls for Mizuha, who confesses her feelings for her big brother. The crowd goes wild and gives her a whopping 120%, breaking the competition record. In the end, Mizuha wins with the power of sibling love. Keiki finds it a bit unsettling, but he sees it as a special kind of family love. Mizuha is extremely happy because now to place based on his assumption. Mizuha is surprised that he guessed everything she did and proceeds to declare her love for him. Keiki is happy to hear her confession, but he just can't admit that she's in love with him as they are siblings. Well, in simpler terms, Keiki apologizes him by kissing him. It's a surprising turn of events, but it seems like their relationship is more complicated than they thought. Keiki wakes up after dreaming about Sayuki's talents when he sees Sayuki in front of him. At first he wonders what his senior is doing at his house, but soon realizes that Sayuki is now actually his wife because after graduating from high school they both got married. Instead of Sayuki Takahara, she is now Sayuki Kuriwa. Suddenly, Sayuki asks Keiki to do it after so many days have passed. Keiki takes out a dog leash and collar around Sayuki and the couple goes out on a walk. Suddenly, Keiki wakes up and thankfully it was nothing more than a dream. Unfortunately, Mizuha also wakes up behind him and kisses him good morning, which is shocking, so he calls for an emergency family meeting. Keiki scolds her and forbids her from doing that again, so Mizuha jumps on him to make him aware of the feeling she is giving him. Keiki feels too good, but his values do not allow him to continue down that path, so he decides to leave home and calls his dad to confirm if they are blood related or not. His dad is surprised but confirms this, but also adds that Mizuha is his favorite daughter. After that, Keiki goes to talk to Shuma and Koharu to let them know that his little sister is actually the girl they've been searching for. They're really surprised by this revelation. However, they can't offer their homes to Keiki because Shuma has visitors, and if Keiki stays with Koharu, Shuma would get jealous. With that, Keiki decides to handle the situation on his own. He sits in a park, thinking about everything, and then he meets Mao. She notices that he looks terrible and invites him to share some food. She encourages him to make amends with Mizuha, but also realizes the complicated problem they've been dealing with. She regrets her previous threat to interfere in any relationship Keiki might have. It's a lot for Keiki to process, but it seems like he has some supportive friends to help him through it. While Mizuha is asleep, she's unsure about what to say to Keiki. Meanwhile, Keiki is just wandering around without any direction. Unfortunately, it starts raining, and Mizuha goes out to find him but can't. When she returns home to prepare dinner, she hears Keiki coming back, but he caught a cold from being in the rain. She goes to the supermarket to get something to help him. And guess what? Minutes later, Keiki wakes up and is surprised to see Sayuki there since Mizuha ran into her at the supermarket. Sayuki gives him special care and climbs into his bed to share her warmth, falling asleep there. Yuika also arrives and is surprised to see this scene, so she hands Keiki some books and then forcefully kicks Sayuki out since she will be the one taking care of Keiki. Both of them start fighting over who will help Keiki, but this annoys Mizuha. After all, she feels a bit jealous seeing them clinging to her brother. With that, she kicks them both out. After everything that happened, Keiki remembers when Mizuha came to his house and feels guilty for forgetting. Suddenly, he realized how he needs to use the bathroom. Once again, Keiki comes across Mizuha without any plot, but this time, Mizuha is even more surprised to see him walking. Keiki has some doubts, so he asks Mizuha when she fell in love with him. Mizuha answers that it was when they first met because she had lost the people she loved the most, and Keiki welcomed her with open arms. She never wants to be apart from him. Keiki understands her feelings and decides to keep their relationship as it is, treating her like a sister even though they're not blood related. And now, Keiki feels like he's still single, but he's surrounded by girls. But guess what? Mizuha asks him out on a date where he can be her boyfriend for just one day. Keiki agrees, and they go out together. Turns out, the last thing Keiki wants to do is reject Mizuha. Meanwhile, everything else remains the same. That's it for today, my fellow men of culture. If you also want girls falling for you, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for more plot-filled recaps.